everybody, to Illuminate, Navigate, Radiate, Journey of Emotional Resilience. I'm your host, Brandon. We have another great journey segment for you today. I'm excited to have a great conversation with my guest today. He's a solo artist from Dub 321. Miles, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, man. Thanks for taking the time to do this. You know, hearing your music and seeing your story in your page and your posts, it really connected with me, resonated with me. So I'm glad you responded and we were able to make this happen.
Right on.
So before we get into it, before we kind of get into the depths of the conversation, you want to just explain kind of what your music sounds like? Because to me, it really does sound like Sublime. And that's why I loved it when I first heard it, because I remember just like growing up listening to Sublime and the times I had while I was listening to them. But do you want to explain just a little bit of the kind of music you do and what that looks like?
Sure. It's I do a blend of, like you said, reggae rock, like Sublime style, but I also tie in quite a bit of hip hop elements. If you dig deeper into my catalog, I got quite a bit of hip hop leaning music, and also just some like heavier rock stuff. I grew up listening to like Sublime, Slightly Stupid, Pepper, Long Beach Dub All Stars, like back in the late '90s, and No Effects is a huge influence of mine. All those bands, Mac Miller, on the hip hop side, and I've kind of blend all those influences together into my own little hodgepodge of music. So it's like reggae rock. I call it reggae rock hip hop. That's kind of what I brand it as.
Yeah, and I would definitely recommend anybody listening to this go check it out. I'll put all your links in the description of this video, but definitely go check out the music because it is really, really good. And then so obviously, I invited you on as well because of your story, and I see you sharing that through what you do as well. So where do you see the importance of sharing like your experiences and your story through some of the things that you've been through?
I think the most important thing to me, or the most important reason why I do it, is because I remember that feeling of just like seeing no light at the end of the tunnel, like that feeling of hopelessness, and that feeling of actually thinking and believing that you're going to be doing that the rest of your life. Because you trying to stop and you can't, and it comes to the point where you get to the realization where you're like, dude, I'm gonna be doing this the rest of my life till it kills me. Like I messed up, and it really deflates any type of hope that you can have in the future. And I think that's the biggest message I try to put out to people, is that there's life after that life, and that you can bounce back from it. And I just want to show people that it's possible and give them even if it's just a little bit of hope. That's my biggest goal.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way of putting it, right? That me being there as well, that hopelessness is so strong, and once you get on it, it just feels like there's no end to it.
Snowball, yeah, it's the self-destructive behavior just snowballs because of that, and you feel more and more worthless, and it's just So if I can show people like, look, I was where you're at, and this is where I'm at now. You know what I mean? And I'm chasing my dreams, and I'm kind of getting there slowly but surely. It's like it inspires people, and that's what I love to do. I love to inspire people and give them hope.
And I think that's the other really awesome part about what I saw in you, is not only are you doing something that you love, but being addicted to drugs and being in those dark places, to come out and be able to do something or be involved in something that's a passion of yours and something you love and something that drives you and motivates you, like. That's that true example that even, life isn't boring just if you stop doing drugs, or life isn't meaningless when you stop, using hard drugs or whatever. Like, you can chase those things you want to chase in life.
I think that's a big key too, to just filling that hole. And it's just, having a higher power and pouring yourself into your passion. I think it is a big part of just moving on from that obsession.
Oh, and I couldn't.
I transferred the obsession over to music. Like I'm addicted to making music.
Yeah, no, I feel you there, and I couldn't agree with you more. With just like, when you're on it, you have those obsessive thoughts to be able to use that for something good or productive or something that you really love really changes your
Yeah.
life on the other side of that. So kind of like just to get into your story a little bit, how did that start off for you? What did that look like when you first started getting introduced to drugs and partying, or however that lifestyle looked for you early on?
When I was a kid, from a very young age, I had probably from like 6th grade on, like I just had a rebellious attitude. Like I had a goal of mine by the time I was in like 8th grade was I wanted to try every drug, you know, and I knew that I didn't want to work 9 to 5 and be on the hamster wheel. I was very anti-establishment, and I started smoking pot in middle school pretty regularly. Um, and I was just doing anything I could in high school. I mean, I was dropping acid and doing ecstasy. 11th grade ecstasy came into the picture. Never really anything like super super hard while I was in high school still, but I dabbled with some pain pills and stuff. Did a lot of drinking. It's just partying, not going to class, not skipping school, and um just my whole life revolved around getting high. Even at that age, I would ride my bike to my friend's house before school just to smoke bong rips before, and he lived. It was a good 20-minute bike ride for me to go to his house in the morning. I'd go there just to get stoned in the morning and ride with him because he had a car, and ride in his car and get stoned on the way to school. So my whole life just revolved around it, and I just got into that cycle where I wasn't comfortable in my own skin unless I was high. You know, I just got so used to being high all the time, and I was also doing dumb stuff that builds up over time. You lie enough, and you cheat people enough, and you mess up enough. You get caught messing up enough. I mean, I had good parents. My parents are pretty conservative values and stuff. I didn't grow up in a bad household or anything, but you get in trouble at home a lot doing dumb stuff, and the feeling of guilt and shame builds up. You feel like a piece
Yeah,
of crap when you lay down at night and you think about all the lies that you told and all the lies you got to remember and all the crap you did. It just you want to numb that so you continue getting high. You know what I mean? So I got caught into that cycle pretty early on. Um, Go ahead.
no, that's a really good description of how that cycle starts and then kind of how it starts to take over. I thought you really like that's a really good way to put it into words of just having fun or just partying a little bit, and then those different things that you have to start doing in order to keep that on, like the self-destructive behaviors you mentioned, lying, cheating, and then you
Skipping
gotta
school and getting caught,
yeah,
all that stuff.
and you have to you deal with the consequences, and I was kind of the same way. Like my parents were involved with my life. They were on top of different things in my life, and so that guilt and shame was always there because I was always lying to them, right? I always had to look them in the face and lie about where I just came from, what I was doing. And that only fed that cycle of wanting to do it more and more and just forget about the shit I was feeling on the inside.
And then, like, on top of it, for me, I was the youngest, so I had two older brothers, and they're both like, I was the only one. You would think that they never really got in trouble. I was the only one that was always messing up, and like they both played baseball. I played baseball for a little while until like 8th grade, and then I quit because I was doing drugs and shit. But they were golden boys, both my brothers, and so I was living in their shadow on top of everything else, and it just made me feel like even more of a piece of crap. Um,
Did that influence affect you growing up? Like, because I've worked in a school since I've gotten clean, or a lot of different schools, and I've talked to kids who like they have that pressure of their older siblings on them because their teachers had their siblings or whatever, and
oh
they
yeah,
they
dude.
say, "Oh, you're yeah."
I went to when I went, my parents sent me to both my brothers went to Catholic school, Melbourne Central Catholic, and I was going to they sent me to Catholic school as well in my freshman year, first year of high school. And I was still playing baseball, like I said, up until 8th grade. And I played that year in 9th grade. I joined the baseball team at Melbourne Central Catholic. And the coach there, Mr. Dooley, I still remember that guy. He's the same guy that coached my brothers, right? And he was so hard on me, bro. Cause I was not as good as my brothers at baseball. I just wasn't. And my brothers were especially my oldest brother, Joey, he was very good. And so Mr. Dooley gave me a real hard time. He was like, "You're sure you're not adopted?" All this kind of stuff. He yelled at me and stuff, and he really made me feel like a piece of crap. I ended up quitting the baseball team. I never played baseball again after that experience. And but yeah, there was a lot of that. My dad used to get real mad at me, and he'd yell at me and tell me I would never amount to anything, and that I was nothing but another Louie, who was my mom's brother, my uncle, and he was like a con artist, alcoholic, drug addict that was in and out of prison and jail, and yeah, he said that to me all the time, like, "You're just another Louie, you're just another Louie," and he said it, no, I believed it, I started using like cocaine for the first time at like the end of my junior year, and I dropped out of school, and because I failed due to absences, and I was just dropped out, and I got my GED. I actually did that, and 'cause I'm a smart kid. I'm a smart. I was a smart kid. I could pass all my tests in school without. I would never do my homework, and that's why I would fail everything. I never did any homework, but I could just sit in class and then like absorb everything, and I would pass all my tests and stuff. But I ended up dropping out in 11th grade. That was the point of saying that, is that taking the GED was easy for me. I just got out and I took the test, and I was good to go. But I moved out. I started like selling cocaine very quickly after I tried it, and I thought I was like Pablo Escobar. I moved out of my parents' house, and I got my own place, because I thought I was gonna build this empire and on drug meat. And I moved out at 17, and it wasn't even like, I think I was going like 8 months, something like that, before I just was using so much that I wasn't making any money anymore, and I couldn't pay my rent, so I had to go back home. And I went to go back home, and my dad was like, "No, you're not coming back here, dude." And I was like, "Oh man," I was like, "Well, why not?" And he was like, "Okay." He ended up being like, "I'll make a deal with you. You could go in the military." Because my oldest brother Joby was in the Navy at that point, and he was like, "If you agree to go into the military, you can come back and live here until you ship out or whatever, if you sign up." So I ended up thinking about it for a few days. I didn't agree to it right then. I thought about it for a few days, and I came back, and I was like, "Well, my older brother Joby's doing good in there, and maybe it'll be a good chance for me to clean up my act and see the world. Maybe it'll be good, as much as I didn't want to, because I'm addicted to drugs, but I was like, part of me was like, I need that, so I agreed to do it. I moved back home, and I got the weed out of my system and everything. It took a couple months for everything to come out of my system, and so I could pass the drug test for the recruiters. I went to the Navy at 18. I shipped out to well, first I went to A school. I did the boot camp thing, and I went to A school for 2 weeks. I was just an undesignated airman, which is like you're like an apprentice. Like, you go in with no designated job, and you can train. You can kind of train to be whatever you want from that point. Whatever you want to, whatever you're interested in. But they put me with the aviation ordnance men. I went to A school for 2 weeks, and on my first leave, I came home. I had like, I think it was like a $5,000 or $7,000 bonus, sign-on bonus that I got or something. And I spent it all on cocaine and ecstasy, and just partied for like 2 weeks straight. And then one of the nights while I was on leave, I was at a hotel room, and we let some shady dudes in the hotel. We were all blackout drunk at the end of the night, and some dudes that none of us knew were in there, and they stole all my uniforms. They were in the hotel room, all my uniforms and my guitar, my nice new acoustic guitar I had just bought. And I woke up blacked out to all my stuff being gone. So when I got to my permanent duty station in Bremerton, I showed up with no uniforms. I had to go report and be like, tell them what happened. So I immediately was getting like a real hard time from my
Yeah.
captain and all my superiors. Immediately, I had to pay for everything little by little out of my own paycheck to replenish my uniform supply, and yeah, it sucked. I was miserable, dude. When I got to that permanent duty station, I was regretting my decision to go in the military so bad, dude. By that point, it's just like, cause like I said, I had an authority complex. You know, like I was a very anti-establishment. It was just not the environment for somebody like me, especially being that young. It was just a dumb
Yeah.
move for me to make, and I you know, it's like I said, I was getting a hard time. They were giving me all the shit jobs, and I was miserable. And I ended up coming up with the idea that I'll get, because when I got there, I was on the USS Carl Vinson. It's a aircraft carrier, and it was dry docked when I got there. So it was like in workups. Everyone was like painting it and stuff and sleeping on a barge that was across the dock. So we all slept on the barge and we go over to and work on the ship during the day and stuff.
Mm.
I hated it. I hated sleeping on that barge, all the people, and I ended up getting an apartment just off the base. It was a cheap little dingy apartment. I think it was like, if I remember right, I think it was like $350 or $400 a month or something like that. And it was just a little small, probably as big as this bedroom I'm in. And then it had like a small little kitchenette. It's very small. It had a shag carpet like this. It was just it was 2 units on the bottom and 2 units on the top. And they both had a shared bathroom in the hallways. So you had to share a bathroom with your upstairs neighbor. I was upstairs. So when I went and moved in, there was somebody at the door next to me knocking on my neighbor's door. And he ended up asking me if I smoked as I'm moving my stuff into the place. I was like, he's like, do you burn? And, you know, I'm in the military. I'm not supposed to. But I thought about it for like 2 seconds. I was like, yeah, I do. And he comes in, he comes over and smokes a blunt with me. And we get to talking. And he ends up telling me that he was selling my neighbor crack is what he was doing. And that's like a regular customer for him. And so the great, my neighbor's crackhead. That's great. And at that point, I'd only done powder cocaine. I'd never done anything like crack before that point. And anyway, him and I started talking, and I was rapping a lot back then. I used to love to rap, and he rapped. He was a black dude. He was cool. He was a nice dude, and we were rapping and stuff, smoking blunt, and all my shipmates from on base started coming over as like a spot for us to hang out and drink on the weekend away from the base, you know, somewhere we could go to the bar hopping and then come back and have somewhere to go besides the base to hang out. And so they'd come over every weekend and be like anywhere from 5 to 10 of us, you know, just hanging out, drinking. And we at Warren, the guy that I met at going into my neighbor's house, he would come over and hang out with us once in a while and just hang out and smoke or whatever. And he'd always go over to Seattle. This was in Washington State. He would go over to Seattle to re-up. And we'd always ask him, like, dude, get us some powder. Because we all wanted to do it. And he'd always go over there and come back and say that he couldn't get powder. He only could get the hard. So he'd always be like, no, I don't want that. This went on. I mean, and that was good 2-3 months of him going over there and coming back and never being able to get it. We'd be like, no, we don't want that. You know what I mean? And we turn it down. So one night we were just trashed, I guess. You know what the difference was, but we all was like happened to like look at each other when he was like, no, that's all I got. And we were like all just at the same time. We're like, fuck it. It was weird. So anyway, we all smoked crack. So fucking embarrassing. Smoke crack, and I loved it. And I was like, holy shit, I've been missing out. I've been wasting my cocaine this whole time. And so yeah, we smoked crack, and like I was friends with the guy, so I was like, I started selling it to all my shipmates.
Mhm.
And I was like playing middleman, you know, and
Yeah.
I'd overcharge them for it and pinch it. And anyway, long story short, I got so strung out, I stopped reporting to duty. I stopped just even going and reporting. And, all one by one, I was still selling to them. Like they were still coming over. My shipmates and shit were still coming over, and I was still selling to them. And that's like how I was surviving because they ended up cutting off my pay and everything. I wasn't
Mhm.
going, and I was getting paychecks automatically for a little while, and then they stopped, and then they started getting popped one by one. My friends started getting like random UAs, or one by one they just all disappeared, got in trouble in one way or another.
Mhm.
And so I had nobody to sell to anymore. I wasn't like selling to other civilians on the street and stuff like that. That was like my sole customer base. You know, that's how I was getting by, and I had nobody anymore. So I slowly went through like the little bit of money I had and couldn't pay my rent and was like down to where I was like buying packs of crackers for 75 cents, like just to eat. Like that was my meal for the day until I got evicted. I got evicted like went listed there till like the last day I could, and then I'm on the other side of the country, dude. I'm from Brevard County, Florida, like Space Coast, like Cocoa Beach. You know what I mean? So I'm on the other side
Oh
of the
yeah,
country.
yeah.
I'm 19 years old, and I'm a scared kid. Deep down, I'm a scared kid. You know. I ended up turning myself back in. I turned myself in because I didn't know what else to do, and they were not happy. I My captain was like, dude, he was like, Gally, you had enough cocaine in your system to kill a small family. You got to save for yourself. And I was just I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen. They put me on restriction, to where I was confined to the ship. They take your ID from you and they make you wear like these red overalls, like say restriction on the back. It's basically like you're basically like an inmate at that point. I mean,
Mhm.
not really, but you are. You gotta like go to like a special muster like 5 times a day and all this stuff, and you can't leave the ship. You're stuck on the ship. And so anyway, I was on that for a while, and then they ended up giving me. I was waiting to go court martial. Like I said, I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen. Um, they ended up give me a job in the officers' chow hall, mess hall, and I was working in the kitchen in there, and I'd take the trash out every morning. So when I would take the trash out in the morning, I wouldn't have to go. I didn't have to go through the quarter deck. I could go. They had this other like trash ramp for like other types of stuff. It was a smaller ramp that went down to the dock that you could like take trash out and shit on. I didn't have to go past the quartermaster and all that and show my ID. I was going down there and taking trash out like that for a few weeks, and it dawned on me. I was like, I could totally slide out of here, you know, like and get off the ship. And so one morning or one night, I packed up I brought a trash bag back with me from work. And I packed up a bunch of my civilian clothes in it.
Mhm.
I brought it to work the next morning. And when I went to go take the trash out the next morning, I grabbed the bag of trash and I grabbed my bag of clothes. I went down the ramp and I threw the trash out and I went behind the dumpster and put on civilian clothes and went to my friend's barracks. My good friend, Eric. And he hid me out in his he had a barracks on base, nice one. And it's like a dorm, like a college dorm type room. And he had a 2-bedroom room and he was the only one there, so we went to boot camp together. So we were friends, and he was like the only one left out of everyone that was coming over to my place that wasn't like busted or like in the brig or like uh yeah. So I went there and he hid me out for like 2 weeks while I figured out what I was gonna do. And I did not have rational like thinking when I was a kid. I did not understand like how to think to tomorrow. I
Yeah.
feel like when I was a kid, like I just did not think consequences through at all. I did not have that, like those brain cells like misfire for me, and I would just do the dumbest stuff and think I was gonna be able to get away with it. Um, so I ended up calling home. This was my huge master plan. I called home and I told my mom that I got a random urinalysis. My parents had no idea what was going, any of it at this. They figured out I'm off doing great. They're proud of their son. I call home and I tell my mom that I got a random UA and I failed for marijuana, and that they're kicking me out. And she was upset, of course, rightfully. And after a lot of back and forth, they, why do you have no money? Because I had to ask for him to get me a Greyhound ticket home, and I lied, and they got me a Greyhound ticket, and I went across the Puget Sound in Seattle, took a Greyhound bus one day. Excuse me. I took a Greyhound from Seattle all the way to Melbourne, Florida, which was like 4.5 days on the Greyhound bus, and came all the way home. Was living back at my house at home. I was going to community college, signed up for community college. I was working at Woody's Barbecue. I had a girlfriend I met. I was living a whole nother life. Like, I was like, in my head, I was like, the whole 6 months went by. I was like, man, I got over on them. Like, you know what I mean? I thought I was going to get over one on the U.S. government, bro. That's how stupid I was. So one day I came home from work or school. I don't know which it was, but I came home, and if you had like parents that cared about you, you know what it's like when you come home and you just know that you can cut the tension with a knife. They figured something out. You got busted somehow for something. I came home and they were both sitting at the kitchen table, like staring, looking at the door where I walked in from, like waiting
for you.
with papers in front of them. And just quiet. And I'm like, oh no. And my dad was like, I remember, I'll never forget it. He's like, you got something you want to tell me or tell us? But I don't remember which it was, but he said something like that. And I was like, I don't know. It's like so many things it could be,
I know that feeling too.
So I'm like, he ends up, cat's out of the bag, whatever. He tells me, you gotta turn yourself in. He's like, are you stupid or something? I remember he said something like that to me. I was like, you can't. I was like, I'm not turning myself in. I was scared to death. I'm honest with you, I was scared to death. I did not. I was like, I remember yelling, I'm not going back. I don't want to go back. I'm not turning myself in. Like, that was the last thing I wanted to do. And I don't even remember exactly how I ended up deciding I was going to turn myself in, but I ended up I went to jail. I was at county jail. I must have just turned myself in. I don't really remember if I tried to get away and they called the cops. I don't even remember. But I know I went to county jail, and I was at the county jail for 2 weeks, and waiting on the government to pick me up. After 2 weeks in the county jail, that was a miserable experience. I'd never been to a county jail before. That was my first time. I was 19. I had a very bad experience. This one dude was like taking my food from my tray and stuff, and got in a couple fights. It was bad. I didn't not have a good time. That was my worst time ever in jail. I did not like it. And anyway, they came and picked me up 2 weeks in, and two NCIS agents picked me up in ties and button-up shirts, and they shackled me up. They put cuffs on my arms and around my waist and on my legs, and they shackled my hands to my waist chains, and they drove me to an airport and escorted me back to Washington State on an airplane, and it was an uncomfortable flight. I got there, and they took me to the brig, dropped me off at the Navy military prison, the brig, and that was a messed up experience. When they get there, they scare the shit out of you at that place. Like, they scream at you, spitting in your face. They tell you to stand at attention. And when you go to stand at attention, like you're taught with your hands like this on your sides, they whack your knuckles with a stick. Say, don't ball your fists at me. Now they want you to stand at attention like this, with your hands like this on your sides, while you're in prison. And then they put you in solitary for observation for like 2 weeks before they put you into the general population. You guys go in a cell by yourself. did that for like 2 weeks. Anyway, that's kind of getting long-winded, but I've had some experiences. I was in there for like 10 months. I was in the brig for about 10 months, and I ended up going to court martial finally. And they gave me an other than honorable discharge, which is like adjudication withheld almost, but for the military. So I didn't get dishonorable. I didn't get a bad conduct discharge. I got really blessed in that aspect. I got basically an adjudication withheld. It's called a other than honorable discharge, or OTH. And they paid for my flight home. I went on to the base for a couple days. They got me a barracks, and I was on the base for a couple days before my flight came around. And I took a flight home. And what ended up saving me for that, they wanted to give me a lot more time than they did, and a worse discharge. But what ended up saving me is they didn't send a letter to my parents that I was deserted till like way after they were supposed to have sent the letter. Like they sent it like way after like I said, I was 6 months. I was gone for 6-7 months before the letter finally came, and my lawyer, like, I guess they're supposed to legally send some kind of communication way before that to your family or whatever. Anyway, that ended up giving me a lighter sentence, and I got out. They flew me home, and I found the hood at home, where I found where the crack was. Figured it out pretty quick, and I started dabbling in it, where I was just go in there, and I'd go on like binges, like sometimes in one night, sometimes 2 days, and then come back, and I wouldn't do it for a while, and I'd stay clean for like a week or two, and I'd do it again, and I'd spend like $700 in a night, just randomly, and then fucking feel like a piece of shit, and then not do it again for like 2 weeks, and then do it again, spend like $800 the next time or whatever, and just kept that cycle. I started going to AA, and when I was like 20, 21, and in and out, I couldn't even put together 90 days, and I ended up going to rehab for my first time when I was 22, just because I was having such a hard time stopping that stuff, and I went to a 30-day residential treatment center in Fort Pierce, Florida, which was an alright experience. I learned a lot, and then I got out, and I immediately messed up. Like, I didn't stay clean at all. I think the doctor prescribed me Klonopin when I got out. Like, I got on Klonopins, and then I was just drinking on Klonopins and smoking crack. It was even worse. And so I went on this one, the summer of 2005, after I got out of that rehab. I was 22. I went on like a 4 months binge. Like, I was living at home. I just disappeared one night, and I never came back, and that was it. I was gone for like 4 months, and I ended up meeting this dude that was selling, and becoming good friends with him. I was like his driver, right? And so he would just like take care of me, and I'd drive him around, do all his errands and stuff, and like we'd sleep at hotels, and like just random hotels every night, or sometimes trap houses. And I was driving this guy around for a while, and then I was kind of selling it myself too on the side, like making money, and he was giving me a lot too. So I was smoking all day, every day, and it got pretty bad to where I'm a big dude. I'm like 185 pounds right now, and it got to the point where I was 135 pounds. I wasn't eating. I was drinking liquor all the time, just smoking crack, and that dude ended up taking off. We parted ways, me and the guy that I was driving around, and I ended up selling my car. So I was like, I had no car, and I sold my car for crack. I signed it over to a crack dealer, and that ran out. I told myself I was gonna take the pancakes and flip them and like make money and come back up. You know what I mean, in my head, but that didn't happen. I just smoked it, and I ended up with no money, and so I hit rock bottom. Basically, I was at a rock bottom spot, and I called home, and I was like, "Mom, man, come get me." And she was like, "What? Where are you?" You know, Kim got me, and she was like appalled or completely shocked at the weight that I was. That was the only time I ever weighed that. I was very, very skinny. And I got home, they brought me home. My dad was pissed. My mom was very upset, crying, and she panicked. You know, they were looking on the internet for where to send me for another rehab. This is only like 8 months after I got out of the other rehab. So I ended up sending me to a Scientology rehab and called Narconon, which was in Stonehawk, which was in Battle Creek, Michigan.
Oh
And
wow, really?
yeah, they flew
That's
me. It's so
amazing.
weird. When I look back on it, I'm like, well, maybe you should just send me like somewhere close. Like, so they picked a Scientology. My mom was upset. I'm sure they sold her on it. I'm sure because they got like recruiters, salesmen that like scare their parents into sending their children there, you know. And so they got her hook, line, and sinker and sent me to Scientology rehab. And that's like a whole story. I don't know if you want me to like get into like that. That's like a whole like I have a 30-minute like where I tell that story, a video that I made where I tell the whole Scientology rehab story. They like
We
literally
can
try
put
to.
that. Yeah, we can put a
We can,
link to that in the description because honestly, I'm gonna go watch that now because that is just because I almost went to like a really
I just
intense
don't want it
rehab
to become
center
so
like that.
long-winded. I just don't want it to become. I mean, I guess I could tell it briefly, dude. Sometimes I get into telling stories, and I end up I feel like I'm taking too long to tell them. But
No, it's been good so far, man.
yeah, all right. So when I got there, I detoxed, and when I first walked in, they had a separate house where you detox. It was like a little 2 or 3 bedroom house where they had like bunk beds in the bedrooms, and you'd rest it, you'd sleep it off for a few days, eat good before you went to the main facility. And the main facility was like a ski lodge type, old like abandoned ski lodge type place, I guess, that they ended up buying, and it was like all wood, multi-floor, like 3 floors, was a basement. And when I first walked into the detox house, there was 2 people sitting in chairs across from each other, like you and I, about 2 or 3 feet apart, with their hands on their knees, and just staring at each other. And I remember when I first walked in, I looked over and I saw them doing that. And I just wanted to go sleep. I went back to my bed and I fell asleep. And I remember looking at them and just thinking they must have just been playing around having a staring contest or something. I didn't think another thought about it. I went to sleep for like 3 days, and I got up and I started talking to everybody a little bit. And then I come to find out they're practicing for you. When you get over to the main facility, you have to do these things called TRs. Is called training routines. And you got to do 12 of them before you graduate from the program. It's like a 4-month program. And so you got to do 12 TRs. And the first TR that you have to do is basically a staring contest where you have to sit across from your twin. You work through the whole program with a twin who you do all your exercises with. It's called your twin, and they're in the program with you. Someone that enters around the same time you did. And so you got to do your TR1 with your twin, and what it is you sit in chairs directly across from each other, stare each other directly in the eyes, and you start out, you do it for like 5 minutes, and then you do 10 minutes, and you can't laugh. There's other people that ruin stuff, and like sometimes people like purposely mess with you and they try to get you to laugh and stuff, but can't laugh. You can't, like, if you get an itch, you can't move your arm and itch it. Like, none of that. You just gotta stay still and look at the other person dead in the eye. And you work your way all up to 2 hours. You gotta do 2 hours before you can move on to the next one. And bro, it sucks.
Did you get to 2 hours?
Yeah, everybody does pretty much. Yeah, you get pretty good at it pretty quick. It's hard at first, but yeah, it disciplined me a lot. Actually, that was probably the one routine out of everything they had that I found it all useful, as far as just like meditating and getting into a space where you're not really thinking. Yeah, but but it was. So then the next ones, you gotta do you do like the first 3, and then you go do the sauna treatment, which I'll tell you about briefly. But when you do like TR3, is like where it starts getting weird. So your twin, you got to ask your twin, do birds fly? And your twin is supposed to like give you like non-answers and like sometimes answer you correctly and then sometimes like deflect your question, but you have to keep asking that same question over and over. Do birds fly? Do birds fly? Do birds fly? So they're like, if you're like, do birds fly? And you're like, man, I got somewhere I gotta be in a little bit. I'm not feeling too good. And you gotta go, what's going on, John? And they say, oh, you gotta get them back to the question. So they'll be like, oh, no, I'm not feeling good. And you're like, I'm sorry to hear that, but do birds fly? It's just like, so I don't even know, bro. And so you got to do it, and you just keep asking, do birds fly? And there's like a training person that's sees over everybody in the room that's doing these training routines together, and you have to. They are the ones who decide if you have reached your realization, the correct realization from the training routine or not. So as you're doing these, you're supposed to write down what kind of realizations you're having from the exercises that you're doing, and you give them to the person, and like you fold up the piece of paper and you give it to them. They look at it and they're like, "Oh, close, keep going." And you're like, and the thing about it is that there's people at the facility that have done the exercises that you're doing.
Yeah.
There's people that are ahead of you in the program that have done them. So we're all addicts. We're passing answers down to each other and stuff like that. Like, this is what got me through it. Say this to them, and you would just like even reword it in your own way or whatever. And they would not take that shit, dude. Like, they'd mess with you. That's where the whole thing is just rigged to mess with your head, dude. Like, so you give them the answer. I can give them the same answer that got my friend Dustin through it, and they'll tell me, no, I keep going. You know what I mean? So it's like, what? So it's basically they let you go on to the next thing when they feel like it after they mess with you long enough. And so then you do the sauna you got to do the sauna, which is for like 30 days almost. You do the sauna treatment, and you do that. You exercise a little bit in the morning for like 15 minutes, and then you go take a handful of niacin. So you just flushing the shit out of yourself, and salt pills, and you go sit in the sauna for like, you work up to like 6 hours, where you're just sitting in the sauna for like 6 hours.
You go sit in the sauna?
Yeah, well,
Oh,
it's intense. It's
God, dude.
intense, bro.
I remember
And
doing
the first,
niacin in high school to like get to pass a drug test. I couldn't imagine going to sit in a sauna after taking it.
bro, it's intense, dude. We would
Oh,
sit in there and play. We would sit in there and play cards, just like eat red, like burning up. And the thing about it is like they had no Scientology doesn't believe in modern medicine. They had no professional like medical trained person there in case like something went wrong or somebody had it. There was this old like stoner dude. He was Indian, like Native American type dude, and he had like long hair, and he talked like this. He's like, "Oh man, you'll be all right, man." He sounded like he was on from Cheech and Chong, and he was definitely not qualified to be overseeing that sauna program. He was the only one there, and I was like, you hear all these horror stories from like old people that went through it and like passed out and like never like died. I don't know how true some of the stories were, but there was a couple of people that had fell out while I was there. Just even like older. It's intense, bro. Like I said, you gotta stay up there up to 6 hours. It's pretty crazy. I don't think you're supposed to do that. Anyway, once you do that, and it's the same thing. That stoner Native American guy decides when you're ready to move on. There's no like set time. Like it's about 30 days, but you might end up in there for 45. You never know. Like they decide when you can move on. And what I guess it's supposed to flush everything out. You would legit. I don't know if it kind of works or not, but I would legit sometimes like taste cocaine in my mouth, like just from the sweating so much. I guess it's
yep.
pulling the toxins out of my body or something. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's a couple times I did. I could like taste the crack in my mouth. People would say they'd start tripping, they have flashbacks and stuff. Um, But anyway, you do that, and then I ended up getting kicked out of that place. So they had all these rules, and they're trying to brainwash everybody, dude. Legit, the people I came in with, there was like a group of like 12 of us that were like at the detox house that moved over to the main facility at the same time. And there was like 6 of them took the Scientology thing hook, line, and sinker, 6 of us. And there was like 3 or 4 of us who were like skeptics the whole time. Like, this is like out of the movie The Faculty. I don't know if you ever seen that movie. There's like something like that, dude. And so these people I went in with, you saw the light go out at some point, like around a month in, dude. It's like they just had this blank stare, and they're like, "I'm gonna work here when I get out." Like they're
Scary.
all hook on. Yeah, it was, bro. And I remember sitting there like, "What happened to Jen?" Like, "Oh my god, dude, they got her too." And I was calling home, and I was like, "You gotta get me out of here." I was like, "This is not like rehab. They're trying to brainwash everybody." And it is. I did not feel safe. I was far away from home. My parents just. There's people getting pulled out. There's all these. If you go online, like look up Narcanon,
Yeah.
Scientology, Narcanon rehabs. There's all kinds of horror stories now.
Oh
It's
man,
ridiculous. I mean, I don't even know if they're still in business anymore because there was so much bad publicity surrounding that place. Um.
that's
So.
wild. And just like thinking about that moment I went to rehab. For one, I live in Michigan, so I'm not too far from Battle
Uh,
Creek. But I'm really glad my parents didn't find that place. But there was this
you're
place.
glad, but
Yeah, there was this place. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like a 9-month one, and they had like stuff like that in it. And my parents were gonna send me, and then like last minute they were like, "Oh, I don't think we can send you there. It sounds like it sounds like they're just brainwashing you." And I can't even
it was
imagine a
probably a
Scientology.
therapeutic.
Yeah,
It's probably a therapeutic community. The other one you're talking about, I've been in one of those too. But yeah, it. So I ended up calling home. I'm like, you gotta get me out of here. And my parents were obviously they were like, no, you're just trying to get out of there and come home. You know what I mean? Like, you're just. So I'm like, man, look up, Google this place. You don't believe me, like, 'cause I had somebody got their parents to mailed them like articles printed from Google on the place. We were like passing them around, reading them, like, oh shit, dude, we gotta get out of here. And so anyway, after that, after about 3 months in, when I really realized that place wasn't for me and they're trying to brainwash everybody, I just became very non-conformist. I had to give them a hard time all the time and uh make fun of everybody and tell them this is bullshit, stuff like that. And you weren't
so
supposed to
kick you
talk.
out because it wasn't working.
No, the kick. Well, I got real sick twice. I caught the flu. It was winter time when I was there. I was not used to the cold, and I got sick
Oh
twice. The
yeah.
first time I went to the medical place, like I said, they don't believe in medicine. So when I told them I went in there and I said I'm sick, and they said you're not sick. You're being suppressed by something or somebody. And I looked at the nurse in the eyes. I grabbed a paper towel from the racker here, and I hocked a big green loogie in it because my chest was just full of phlegm. I said I'm sick. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I need some medicine. I'm like, I had a fever. I was very sick. And, so they give you this cold pack. It's a cold pack and it's just vitamins and, like cayenne pepper pills. That's it. They don't give you, they don't give you any antibiotics. They don't believe in any of that type of
Yeah.
stuff. They don't believe in germs. They don't believe that germs exist. They think that if you're sick, it's because you're being suppressed by something or somebody in your life or yourself. And that's the whole reason you're sick. So then I got sick again about a month and a half later, and I was just over it. I didn't even go to the nurse. I was probably like 3 weeks from graduating at that point. Like, well, I was coming close to getting to the end of the program, and I just stayed in bed. I didn't go to class. I didn't try to go to medical because I knew that was going to be like. And I just laid in bed and I was very sick. And the director they ended up coming in trying to get me to go to class. I was like, go F yourself. And then the director ended up coming in and being like, Gally, get out of bed right now. And you should go to class. I'm like, no. Told him the same thing. And he was like, all right, pack your shit. You're getting kicked out. I was like, what? I was like, all right, bet. and and then I packed my stuff and I went to his office, and he was like, all of a sudden his whole demeanor changed, and he was like acting all forgiving, and like he had like he believed in me, and like it was just very weird. Like he was like apologetic, and he was like trying to like flatter me and stuff, and like so he ends up telling me that they're gonna put me in ethics for a week, where you just sit in a room, can't talk, you're in there for 10 hours a day, and you just copy out of a Scientology book. You just copy it word for word for 10 hours, and you can't talk or nothing. It's like detention. I had to do that for a week, and then I was supposed to get out, do my last 2 weeks, and go home legit with a certificate. So I did the ethics for a week, and then I got out. It was my last day at ethics. I was gonna get out, and I had like 13 days left in the program at that point. My last day at ethics, I'm like, all right, so I'm going back to the regular group now, right? And the same guy, Eric, who's now he's actually, you can look him up. The guy Eric, I can't remember his last name off the top of my head, but he was like on Dateline. I ended up seeing him on Dateline like years later. He was talking about Scientology. He like came out he came out against them and was like spilling the beans about a bunch of stuff. But the same guy at the time, I said I can go back to group now, and he was like, I was like, sorry, Gally. He's like, you're out of here. So all of a sudden, I was getting kicked out again. It's out of nowhere. I didn't do nothing else. Very strange. And he was like, okay, pack your stuff. We changed our mind. So I'm like, I didn't want him to leave anyway. I didn't really care, but so they called my mom. They get the flight set up, and they're supposed to take me to the airport to catch my flight. I think it was like the next day or something. And I get in. I wait for the van to come pick me up. Van comes. And the airport from where we were, the Detroit airport, I think it was like a 45-minute drive or something like that. And so we get on the interstate, and not even 10 minutes off the interstate, the guy pulls off the exit. Like, and it's not like it's like a residential exit. Not somewhere. I was like, well, maybe he's got to get gas or smokes or something. Like, who knows? So I was like, I'm thinking of it. So then he pulls into like a Days Inn. Like a shitty Days Inn. And I'm like, what are we doing? He's like, you gotta get out, man, and this is the last stop for you. They have a room in my name already, and gave me $40 and said good luck. So I was like, what? Like, you can't be serious. They just got done. That's what I'm like, tell you, that's what they do. That's their MO. I'll tell you in a minute. So I call home and I tell my mom, like, these MFers just dropped me off at a hotel. They're supposed to take me to the airport. I'm supposed to catch my flight that my mom got for me and paid money for it. And now I'm going to miss it. Well, she was like, she had to cancel the flight, get me a new flight for the morning. And she wired me a bunch of money because I didn't know how I was going to get to the airport. I was going to take a taxi or train or however I was going to get there. But she sent me like $400 to make sure I had enough money to eat and get my way to the airport. So, dude, I went to a bowl. I wanted a drink. I just wanted to have a drink after everything I'd been through. I went to the gas station to get some beer, and they don't sell beer in the gas station in Michigan. I didn't know that. So I walked 2 miles to the bowling alley, and I had just got 2 like rum and cokes, and I drank those. I had like $30 left or something like that from the money this is before my mom wired me the money. And I went back to the hotel, walked back to the hotel with a buzz and $30 in my pocket. As I'm walking through the parking lot, I see a dope boy walking through the parking lot with a streetwalker. Like, it was very obvious who they were, like what kind of people they were. I walked up to him, I was like, "What's up, bro?" And he was like asking me if I was a cop. I was like, "Listen, I've had a real bad day, man." I was like, "Can you help me out or not?" And he ends up taking me back to the room, and he was dope boy, and I started smoking. And then went and picked up my Western Union from my mom. The guy, dope boy, drove me to pick it up. And I spent $300 on crack that night. It was the last time I smoked crack. It was the scariest experience I ever had on a drug. It's the highest I ever been. I don't know what was in that crack that they smoke in Michigan, but I was so high. And I ended up spending all of it but $100, like I said. 7 a.m. came around, and I'm supposed to catch a flight at like 10 or something. And I still hadn't figured out how I was going to get to the airport. So I ended up telling the guy, I give you $100 to drive me to the airport, you know? And she said, yeah. And so we get like halfway down the highway, and it's raining and like sleeting. The roads are very bad, and these people are drunk, high on crack. I'm high on crack, and just like it's a scary ride. There's like a lot of traffic, and this roads are slippery. And I ended up being like, dude, let me drive. That's how bad it was. And they let me drive the car the rest of the way to the airport. It gets to the airport, and I kept my stem on me because it was still packed full of resin. And I was doing pushes in the dang parking garage of the airport, getting ringers, thinking that the fire alarms are going off and stuff, and that the security officers were following me around. It was a very dumb thing to do, but it was a scary experience. It was very scary. And I ended up going and spending, I think I had like enough money to get like 5 drinks in me and calm myself down. I like drank a bunch of alcohol, as much as I could buy. Drank that, calmed my nerves as much as I could, and just laid down at the terminal, closed my eyes, even though I was bugging out. Like my heart's like, I just closed my eyes until my flight came, and I flew home. And I never told my parents about that for like, I think a few years or something before I told them. I don't want to tell them I smoke crack. You know what I mean? I smoked crack at the end of rehab. And but I ended up didn't tell them about it. And what happens is, like you said, they do that on purpose with people. And I'm gonna tie everything together right now. The reason that dude waited and let me stay another week and was all nice to me all of a sudden, because in the paperwork that the client sign when you send someone there, if you get discharged for some reason or leave, all the way up until 2 weeks before you get out, you're entitled to half of your tuition or whatever it's called. You're entitled to half your money back. But
Makes sense.
if you're there up until the point of 2 weeks left or under, you don't get anything back. So his boss must have been like, "What are you doing, kicking this dude out 3 weeks? Let him stay another week and kick him out, so we get all the money." And and then on top of that, what they do is exactly what they did. They know your drug of choice is, and they drop you off in where you're most likely to relapse, so that you'll relapse and you call home, and then they'll send you back as a retread.
Yep.
And they'll send you back as a retread. They give you a retread discount. They send you back. And that's like their whole scam. That's what they do. They knew what they were doing when they did that. They were supposed to take me to the airport, and they didn't. And yeah, anyway, I had a very bad experience. I did not enjoy that night very much at all. And when I got home, I tried to go smoke crack. I started going to AA. I put together a little over 90 days, and I went out to smoke crack one time, where I would normally before, and I just, same thing. Like I said, a very bad experience. It was not uncomfortable. I did not like it at all. And I only smoked like $40 worth that night. I was out for a few hours, and I came home. I remember I fell asleep on the couch and for like a few hours, and I woke up and I just had like a panic attack. Like I don't know what it was. I was just like bawling, crying, and I was just like, it was like God picked me up on my shirt collar and was like, "This isn't what you're supposed to be doing." And I was just like, it was overwhelming. I didn't believe in God at all at that point, but that's what it was like, and it was an intense experience. I was like, I'm not ever doing that again. And I didn't. I just kept going to AA. I went to AA for a while, and then I kind of stopped doing that. I did it for over a year, and I was clean. I stopped going to AA, but I was still doing good. I was smoking. Started smoking, and that went on for a few years until that's when I had my surgery. in 2009. I did like 3 years off the crack. About, and when I turned 26, I had surgery on my. I had bad sinuses. My whole life, I've had like chronic sinusitis. I've had 2 sinus surgeries already prior to that, and they decided they wanted to give me a tonsillectomy and remove my adenoids. I was supposed to fix the problem. They made it sound like a simple procedure, like it would be like the recovery would be like nothing. But when I came out of the anesthesia from that surgery that I had, man, it was probably one of the most intense pains I've ever felt in my life, dude. It felt like it felt like exactly what happened. It felt like they cut my throat out with a hot knife. Because that's what they do. They cauterize it and everything. And that's what, dude, it felt like I got my throat cut out with a sword. It was so painful. I remember opening my eyes and there's a nurse right in front of me with a button ready asking me pain level 1 to 10. And I'm like 10, 10. She pushed the button and she's like, what about now? And I'm like 10, 10. And she pushed the button 3 or 4 times before I was like bearable.
Yeah.
And they ended up they prescribed me liquid Lortab and Percocet 10s at both of them.
Oof.
Yeah. And I was on that for a good 4 or 5 weeks. Like just over, I think it was like 45 days worth or something like that. And it took a long, it was miserable. I hurt to breathe. I was drinking Ensures. I could barely even drink Ensures. I was losing weight. I couldn't eat. I was depressed. And anyway, I ended up healing over time. And my medication ran out. I don't know, one day I just wasn't feeling good. And was like, I went the whole day, and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm coming down on the flu or something. I don't feel good at all. And I remember going to bed that night and not being able to sleep. I was getting hot flashes and shit, and I didn't know what was going on. I was like, man, I got a fever. I don't know what's wrong with me. And I ended up Googling my symptoms the next day. Like just from like looking shit, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And I figured out I was having drug withdrawal. Which I had never experienced physical withdrawals like that before. As much as I had dabbled with oxys before, and I would just do like a quarter of an oxy and be like throwing up. I'd be so high, I never did it enough to where I'd get withdrawals from not using it. And so yeah, I figured out that I was having withdrawals, and they got worse and worse. I was very sick, and I called my doctor. And I was like, I do not feel well at all. Is there any way you can wean me off of this medication? And she was not having it. She's like, I'm not a drug dealer. I don't know what to tell you. You had your allotment that you're allowed to have, and that's it. And I was like, she accused me of using opiates prior to the surgery. If you're having this bad of a time coming off of them, you very obviously were using them before the surgery, which I wasn't. And so she told me I'm not a drug dealer and blah blah. And so I was like, I hung up the phone, just like, oh shit, what am I gonna do? I felt like ripping my skin off my bones. I remember that was the feeling I was trying to describe to my mom. Like I was like, I feel like I want to rip my skin off my bones. And I ended up going. I knew people that used like Roxy's. They called them at the time blues. And I knew people that did that stuff. And so I ended up going over to my buddy's house and getting some oxycodone 30s, just with with completely good intentions, honestly, to just wean myself off of them, so I wouldn't feel like I did. That was all I wanted, and I never weaned myself off of them. I just I started out where I was doing like halves of pills, and I was playing live. I was playing music and stuff at the time. And I kept using them for because I would tell myself that it gave me a better stage presence. I feel more comfortable when I'm on stage. It helps the nerves, and I feel like I can let loose more and be more of a showman if I have a couple pills in me. And my habit got worse and worse. I got to the point where, at first I was just snorting them, not even snorting them. I don't even know why I said that. I never snorted. I never snorted them because my sinuses were bad. I would chew them up, and I didn't like snorting them, and I would chew them up, and it got to the point where I went from chewing up like 2 a day, 3 a day, 4 a day, and I was like nodding out, like on stage in the middle of a song, and like couldn't. I'll come to in the middle of the song. I couldn't remember what song we were playing. Like start playing something else. It's like the wrong song, and embarrassing myself. And so I just got. And then I started selling my stuff. Like I'd pawn my stuff with the intention of getting it back out. It's just so I could not be sick if I was like low on money, and lose guitars to the pawn shop left and right and stuff like that. And that just got worse and worse. In 2010, a year, not even a year into chewing them up on the street, about 10 months later after my surgery, I trying to remember exactly how it went down. I was just real. I was just really sick one day. I had been sick for like 2 days. So I wasn't able to find anything, and I guess I just came across some money, or I either couldn't get pills for those 2 days, or I was broke and came across money or something. But I ended up finding what I could get, finding what I needed, and I went over to my buddy's house. And I was very dope sick. That's probably the most sick I'd let myself get at that point. And I went over to my buddy's house where they shoot up there, and I never even thought about doing it. I just said I never would do that. And I was so dope sick that I made a decision that I wanted to shoot up, because I didn't want to wait the 45 minutes for it to start hitting me from chewing it up. And I asked my buddy to do it for me because I was so sick. I was like, I just want to feel better right away, because I remembered how quick it hit you, in the hospital when they pushed the button. I was telling my buddy, I was like, dude, just do it for me this once. And he was like, he must have said it to me 30 times. Like, Miles, don't do it, bro. Please don't do it. You'll never want to do it any other way. If you do it, if you really want me to do it, I'll do it. Please don't. And I was like, dude, I just kept on pleading with him, and he did it. And I was like, holy shit. It's the same thing like when I smoked crack. I was like, I've been wasting my pills this whole time. Holy cow.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to do it another way. After that, I could be dope sick with a pill in my hand. If I didn't have a needle, I would wait until I was able to get a needle. I'd endure being dope sick until I could get a needle, just because even though I could just take it or snort it, whatever, I wouldn't do that. You just get addicted to the process. And so in 2010, I started doing. I went to the doctor one day to try and get prescribed something. I went to try to say my back was hurt. Because everyone's got a bad back. All you gotta do is go to the doctor and tell them your back hurts. They'll put you in for an MRI, and everybody's got a bad back. All you gotta do is get an MRI, and they'll prescribe you pills. So I was trying to get like an MRI, or get prescribed like something in the meantime until I saw the MRI, until I got the MRI. And so I went to this doctor, this back center, and she put me a prescription for tramadol. I was like, oh man! I remember I was so disappointed. I had such high hopes for that doctor's appointment, and I left with a prescription for tramadol. And I remember looking at it in the parking lot, and it was just it's like this, it's just a regular tramadol. It was like a regular hospital type prescription on a piece of computer paper. And it was just plain white paper. There was no watermark on it. There was no stamp that said official or anything like that. It was just a printed out piece of paper. And the doctor's signature was just a loop. Right? So I'm pretty good at Photoshop and graphic design, editing and stuff like that. So I was like, I could make these so easy. And I went home and I looked up how do they write, how do they word the prescription for the pills I want? How do they write oxycodone, hydrochloride, 30 milligram, or HCl, oxycodone, HCl, 30 milligram, and the amount of pills to be dispensed. And I figured out how they write. I looked at, did my research, and I started making fake prescriptions. And I was under my parents' insurance at the time because I was in my 20s, but I was going to college, so I could still be in their medical insurance. And I started out just doing like a script here and there, and I kept getting away with it, and it got to the point where I was getting this is when I started doing Dilaudid too. I was getting it. It got to the point where I was getting the greens, the 15 milligrams. I was getting the 30 milligrams and Dilaudid all in my name every month under the insurance, and I was also getting them for my mother under her name and picking them up, and getting them for my father under his name and picking them up. So I was getting 3 full scripts of 180 blues, 180 greens, 90 Dilaudid every month. Three of those times 3, and for $10 a bottle for the insurance. So I was paying like $90 total for like thousands of pills, and 1,000 pills or whatever it was. Anyway, inevitably my habit got really bad, where I was doing like 40, 50 pills a day, and I was throwing up all the time. My body was just like rejecting the drug. I was putting so much of it in me. I was just constantly throwing up. I couldn't even start the process of trying to get high without having a trash can next to me to just puke into while I was doing it. It was gross. And that went on for a while until I got caught one day. I went to a pharmacy one day. I went to a different Walgreens than I usually went to because they were out of the pills at all the places I would normally go. They were out of them, and I really wanted to get them. I went to a different Walgreens a town over, and when I turned the prescription in, the pharmacist, the head pharmacist, I guess, was at the window, and he was like, "This looks like it's photocopied." It really didn't. It didn't look any different than like the one I got. But he said, "This looks photocopied. I'm going to keep this." I was like, "Listen, dude, you can't keep that. That's mine. You can say it looks photocopied all you want, but that's mine, and you have no right to keep it. And you can't just say you think it looks photocopied and keep it." And it worked. He gave it back to me, but he wrote on there, "It looks photocopied. Verify," on the paper. So of course I didn't use that one and turn it in somewhere else, but I went and got a new one, and I continued doing what I was doing, and didn't think anything of it. But I'm 99.9% sure that guy flagged me in the system at that point and put a flag in the system, and it was like 6 prescriptions later, I got caught. And I just so happened to get 6 counts. So I think that's what happened. What happened was I went to go pick them up at the Walgreens I normally would go to, and I went to go pick them up, and they're like, "They're almost ready. Give us another 5 minutes." So I had gone through the drive-through, so I just kept driving, and I was like, "Okay, I'll just drive around for 5 minutes, smoke a joint, come back." And I did that, came back. I got away with it so much. At this point, I had been doing it for 4 or 5 months, maybe. And I didn't get nervous doing it at all at this point. It was just like I didn't think I'd ever get caught. Anyway, I went to go pick it up, and I was waiting. They were taking a while to give it to me, through the drive-through. And the next thing I know, I got boxed in by like 3 or 4 police cars, and went to jail. I got 6 counts of prescription fraud, obtaining a controlled substance by forgery or fraud, which are 3rd-degree felonies. And I got trying to remember what I got. I got sentenced to a year probation, 6 months of community control at a halfway house, and 6 months of probation after I got out of the halfway house is what I got. I went to county for a little bit, and then they released me with that sentence. And so I had to go to this halfway house, which was like a freaking dump, like infested with rats and fleas, and it was right in the hood in Titusville, Florida, and so you couldn't even walk, like go job hunting, walk down the street without people yelling at you if you want to buy crack and stuff. There was like 6 or 7 halfway houses in this neighborhood. It's crazy. And anyway, they put me there, and I wasn't even over a month in before I got out and ended up figuring out where to get pills. And while I was out job hunting, and I got some pills. I think I did it like 2 or 3 times, and about the third time, I guess they were on to me because I was like acting different. Like changes my personality a lot, makes me more outgoing, more social and shit. And I guess they noticed, and they popped me with a UA, and I failed their analysis and got kicked out of the halfway house. So the stipulation of my probation was that I finished that. And so I ended up like bucking my probation, not going for a while. I was like just absconded, and I was like staying at a buddy's house, and then ended up getting caught and going back. So what happened was I ended up calling my probation officer and like spinning this whole web of lies, this whole story about why I didn't check in and all this stuff. And they're like, "Oh, you're good. You're good. Just go check in." So I told her I needed to move to the other office. I wasn't living in the same area. And she's like, "You're good. Just go to the office and check in with your new officer. You're good. I promise you're good." She really convinced me I was good. And I went to go check in at the other place, and they locked me up. And they cuffed me up right there. And I remember they interrogated me over some crime I actually didn't commit. So while that happened, and they interrogated me over this car. What do they call it? What do they call it when not a carjacking, but just somebody stole stuff out of a car, like and they said be a car burglary. And they were questioning me about it. It was in a neighborhood they're telling me that they had my DNA inside they're telling me all kinds of lies, dude. And I legit, like, at this point, like, I would admit it if I did it, admit everything I've done, but they were trying to everything they could to get me to say I did that. And I was like, gosh, I was like, listen, dudes, I didn't do it. And they're like, there's no way when you're at your worst point, maybe you don't remember. Like, they were really grilling me. I was like, nah, I didn't do it. And they ended up dropping that. And I went back to jail, and they gave me 3 years. I'm trying to remember what they gave me. I gave a year community control, and then 2 years of probation after it. It's almost triple what I originally got. About exactly triple what I originally got. So I had to do a full year of community control and then 2 years of felony probation after that. And the first 6 months of the community control I had to do at a therapeutic community is like the Bridge, which is like a rehab. It's also a therapeutic community where you like snitch on each other and hold each other accountable. And it was the place sucked. Anyway, I ended up graduating there, and I was working. While you're there, you can start working like 2 months in. You last 4 months. You go out and you work. You take the bus to work. This was in Orlando, Florida, and I was working at a telemarketing place, and I ended up becoming floor manager there pretty quick. While I was at their facility still, I was a floor manager at this telemarketing place. And when I got out, I had made friends with the owner, the boss guy, and he was real supportive of me. He's almost like a mentor at that point. And the whole place was like a scam. It was like one of those places where you call people to lower their electric bill.
Yeah.
But you're actually like you're actually duping them. Like it's a whole anyway. But that's what I was doing, and my plan was I was gonna go work for him when I got out. I was gonna go work for him, and I did. I went and started working for him when I got out of that place, and I started using Kratom. I found that stuff, and I started using that daily until I think it was my dog. My dog got hit by a car or something, and I just wanted to get high. And the girl next door to the office we worked at she did pills, and I got some pills. Next thing I knew, I was shooting up every day again. And I was out there working, and I just got worse and worse. I ended up moving back home to Brevard County, and that's when things got real bad. Around 2012, from 2012 to early 2014, I was just waking up every day, broke, with no money, and junkie stunned every day. Like, just going out and stealing from anywhere I could, or running any kind of scam I could run, and having someone else go return the stuff and get a gift card, and then go sell the gift card to the Haji Mart and get like 50 cents on the dollar for the gift card, and just do this over and over again every single day. You didn't even like go to like church, like dressed up. We'd grift some people, man. We'd go to like church and we'd like wear like nice clothes and act like we were there for church and pretend we locked our keys in the car and then we needed money for the locksmith. And people give us like $50 here, $50 there. And like, we're waiting on the locksmith. We're short this much money. And all kinds of scams. And we'll go to the church office where they like help you with your rent. We'd make like fake electric bills that were late, and like fake like rental agreements where we were late, and our eviction notices. And they'd give you checks for your rent. I'd have my buddy pretend he was the landlord and put his number on the thing, and they call him to verify everything and say, "Yeah, I'm about to kick his ass out. He's not paying." And we get with everything, just running scams every day. That was my life, and obviously, if I was doing that, I lost everything at that point. Like, I sold all my music equipment. Eventually, I just sold it all piece by piece until I had nothing left. All I owned was my dog and my clothes. Like, that was it. And my phone. Like, it wasn't even like, I probably had a burner phone. Like, and that went on till one time I broke into I didn't break in. One time I went into my brother's house, and took some stuff when I was real dope sick, and I pawned it. And I'd also been doing all kinds of other reckless stuff around town. And it just all caught up with me. My brother went to the cops about them missing stuff. And it wasn't me. It's such a dumb thing to do. We're cool. Like, he's forgiven me and stuff. But they didn't take it. I pawned the stuff in my name. You know what I mean? Like, it's just reckless behavior. So I figured out what it was real quick. And was one day I had a card from a detective on my door. And then, like, the next day, he showed up again. And I was actually there. What happened when I was out back smoking a cigarette? I was out back smoking a cigarette, and on the back porch of the apartment I was at, and he came around the back porch, and he asked me if I was who I am. He's like, "You John Galley?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Can you step outside and talk to me?" He said who he was, detective, whatever, blah, blah. And he's like, "You want to sit out here and talk to me?" I was like, "You got a warrant?" And he was like, "No." I was like, I'm not going out there, and you're not coming in here." And he was like, "All right, you want to play it that way? That's fine." It's like, "I got one on the way right now. I got a warrant on the way. You can do this the hard way if you want to do it the hard way." And I was like, "All right." And I was like, "All right, let me just go change my clothes." And she called warrant. I was acting like I was going to cooperate. And I remember I went and took like the last like pieces of boxing I had. So they might be going to jail, you know? And panicking inside. I'm panicking, like, that's the last thing you want to ever do that day is go to jail, and any day. And so I'm panicking, my fight or flight's kicking in, and I end up, I changed my clothes, and I went to the front bedroom of the apartment, and I looked out the window, like looking around, and I didn't see no cops out front. Like, he had no backup or anything. Like, I didn't see nobody. So I kicked the screen out the front window, and he was at the back porch, and there's nobody. And so I started running. It's like, once I got out the window and I looked around and there's nobody, I just ran the other way, and full speed. And next thing I know, a freaking another cop pulled in just as I was about to get out of the parking lot of that apartment complex. I was about 2/3 of the way across the parking lot. It was probably about the length of a football field. And the other cop came and I guess saw me, must have seen me running from when he was pulling in from the main road, and just started hauling in at me. And the loudspeaker that they have. He's like, you better stop fleeing right now, or I'm gonna let the dog out. Stop fleeing, or I'm gonna let the dog out. And I was like, I kept running for a second, and he kept saying he's gonna let the dog out, and I guess my reason kicked in for a second. I was like, do I really want to get mauled by a dog? And I was like, you know what I mean? I was like, I don't know about all that. So I stopped running, and he got out and fucking he was very aggressive with me. I guess reasonably so. I was running, and they cuffed me up. And I remember they took me to jail, and I was like, I had this just freaking overwhelmingly like peaceful feeling. I was sitting in the cop car. I was like, it's finally over. It was such a relief, dude. Like deep down, like I could cry. It was such a relief, man. Like tomorrow I ain't gotta wake up and do that, even though I know I'm gonna be real sick. At least it stopped me. And I actually thanked the cop. I was like, man, I think he saved my life. I should look up who he was. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. But so I went to jail and started detoxing pretty quick. After I got to county jail, they put me in the medical wing where they put it's like a big open dorm. I had been there several times before, in and out of county jail, and so I was back in maybe the 4th or 5th time within that 5-year period. And laying there detoxing again, and just the tapes playing in my head over. I'll make all my failures, all my mess ups, everything. Like, yeah, I can't get right. No matter how hard I try, no matter how hard I want to get right, I can't get. I'm just broken. Like, I'm fucked. Like, I can't believe I'm here again. Hating myself. Like, I used to literally say, I had very bad self-destructive thoughts. I would say I hate myself and I want to die, like, pretty regularly in my head. And it was just like, at that point, I was at my lowest point when I was at detoxing in that county jail again. And I lay there for about 3 days, just sick, hating life, and watching this dude was bunked next to me. His name was LaQuentin. And he was right next to me, and he was freaking happy all the time. And he made me sick to my stomach. He was always happy, and he was like reading his Bible and praying and having a good time. And I'm like, about 3 days in, I looked over at him, and I found this was probably the first thing I said to somebody while I was in there that time. And I looked over at him, I was like, bro, what do you got to be so happy about, dude? I was like, look around where you're at, dude. There's nothing to be happy about here. Wipe that smile off your face. And he's like, I experienced jail. You can expect people to come back at you a little bit aggressively if you say something like that to him, But he didn't. He met my aggressiveness with kindness, and he was like, he was happy to tell me what he was so happy about. I guess I was just I was at such a low point. Like, that must have been me asking for a little bit of his happiness. I don't know. But I listened to him when he told me what he had to be so happy about. He told me about Jesus. And he ended up talking me into. I was atheist. I should say this. I was an atheist. Like, I didn't believe in God at all. I didn't want nothing to do with God. I used to make fun of people, Christians, and people that believe in God, like a lot of people do now. And I was just an atheist. I wanted nothing to do with God. And so anyway, he ended up talking me into reading the book of John together, Gospel of John. And we started reading it back and forth together, just like switching off, reading a paragraph. We think we were doing it maybe like for 30 minutes a day, like just reading, passing it back and forth. About 3 days in, after doing this a few times, and I'm asking questions and stuff and picking his brain. And about 3 days in, I got real emotional. While reading, I got very emotional, and he could tell that I was going through something. He asked me if I wanted to pray with him. I said, yeah. And I said a prayer. I asked Jesus to save me. And I had the most intense spiritual experience. I felt like all the guilt and the shame and the unforgiveness and the anger and the resentment and just felt it all get ripped out of me, dude. It was like tangible. I could feel it getting ripped out of me, and I could feel the love of God just wrap around me. It was the most intense experience. I'll never forget it. No one will ever be able to convince me God isn't real after this experience I had. And my withdrawals left me. It sounds like bullshit. It was just like legit my experience. What happened to me? My withdrawals left me, and all that unforgiveness, and I got that dude's happiness. Like right then and there, I was like tasted that dude's happiness. That's how he got it, and I was walking around with a big smile on my face too, dude. I called home. And I called home, and my mom was literally like, "Who the fuck are you? And what did you do with my son?" Like, because normally I go to jail and I would beg them for money and commissary, send me shit, and I was like, "You don't gotta send me anything. I don't deserve it." You know what I mean? I was like, "I'm good. I'll get by." And she's like, "Who are you? What you do with my son?" Like, I was like, "I'm good. I'm content." And I told her about what happened and everything because she was very happy. My mom used to always tell me, she's like, "You know what you need? You need Jesus." I was like, "I don't want nothing to do with Jesus, Mom." It's like Jesus can't help me. And so anyway, I had that experience. I was just like, I felt the love of God wrapped around me, man. And I was weeping and weeping and weeping and weeping. Just tears of joy of like relief. And I could tangibly felt like I forgave myself and was forgiven by my creator in that moment. And I was very emotional for a good 2 weeks after that, where I was just like freaking spiritual goosebumps all over me all the time, hair standing on end. Like it's intense. And I started reading the Bible, and just wanted to know more after I had that experience. And so I started reading the Bible, and while I was in the county, I got called in for additional. But like I said, I was doing reckless stuff out there. I got called in. It was all down to catch up with me. I got called in for additionals. My charges for when I originally got caught with my brother were burglary, unoccupied dwelling, false verification to pawnbroker, and trafficking stolen property. Right, and then I got called in for additionals 3 times while I was there. For once for grand theft for stealing from Home Depot, and then I also got 3 counts of possession of a firearm by a felon. So I was already a felon, and my dumbass stole bullets from. I stole boxes of platinum bullets from Bass Pro, like $100 and something boxes of bullets, and I'd sell them to the pawn shop. I got money from the pawn shop for the bullets, and I did that without ever thinking about it coming back to me as a possession of firearm or ammunition by a felon charge. And they got me 3 counts of that, which is that's a 3-year minimum mandatory charge right there. And they got me with, I'm trying to think of what else. They called me in at least. I ended up with like 15 felonies. They're all similar: like grand theft, trafficking stolen property, false verification to a pawnbroker, and then ammunition or firearm by a felon. And they wanted, dude. So I had no idea how long I was going to, if I was going to prison or what, when I made the decision to turn to God. And so it wasn't like I did that being scared. I was just at a low point, and I ended up finding out they wanted to give me 10 years when they started like giving me offers and shit. You know, I'm going back to court. I got 4 cases, so I'm going back and forth to court. They didn't consolidate everything. It took them forever just to consolidate my cases into one. So I'm going back and forth to court for no reason. But you never get anything done. They just transport you there. I'm going 3-4 times a week for nothing. And they started giving me offers after a little bit, and they wanted to give me 10 years. And I couldn't believe it. I was so scared, man. I was like, man, I was messed up, dude. 10 years. And my mom ended up getting me a paid lawyer. She didn't have a lot of money to do something like that, and so I'm very grateful she did that. Even though he really didn't do much, he even after getting the paid lawyer, he sold us a hope and a dream, and the prosecution, they didn't want to budge. They didn't want to come down 10 years, and they kept on coming back at us with the 10 years. And so finally it came down to, after saying no to the 10 years and trying to make a deal, you only get so many chances at that, until they're like, okay, this is your last time. You can either take the 10 years or you're going to go to trial. And then you get found guilty at trial, you get a lot more than 10 years. You could get 30, you could get 20, you could get 15. I could also get less, or I could get more, or you get the same, but it's a gamble, and so I was like, dang. So I went back to the county jail, scared, not sure what I was going to do, man. Should I just take the 10 years, or should I try to go to trial and see what happens and just have faith? And I prayed heavy that night, just prayed and prayed and prayed. And I came to the decision that I was going to plea out to the judge. That's what I settled on. That's what I felt most comfortable with. Almost I was going to plea out to the judge, which is an option, and I was going to make no excuses for my behavior. And I told the judge, I said, I'm not up here to make excuses or try to dodge being punished or anything like that. I deserve to be held accountable for my behavior. And I said, I just wanted to plea out to you to communicate that, let you know whatever time you decide to give me today, I'm going to use it to better myself, to make sure that I use my time wisely, become a better person so that I don't hurt people I love in my community ever again. And I deserve to be punished. And he's like, man, I don't know why, I believe you. And he said he gave me the lightest sentence he was able to according to the law. Mm-hmm. So he actually said that if I was able to give you less time, I would. I believe you. I was like, I don't know why. It's like, I get some real shitbags in here, but for some reason I believe you, Mr. Galley. And I was like, I knew that was the right thing to do when I prayed and prayed. Like I just felt comfortable with that decision. And so he gave me 55 months in prison, DOC, which is just under 5 years. Mm-hmm. And I had to do 3 years of probation when I got out. So I had to do 3 years felony probation after the 55 months. So I went to prison, and I ended up doing 3 years and 11 months with game time, just 1 month shy of 4 years is what I actually did. But while I was in prison, I did exactly what I was going to do. I used my time. I bettered myself. I read my Bible. I read as many manifestation, positive thinking books, just thinking positive and using your thought process and being constructive and using your time. Anything I could find to make myself a better person, I absorbed it. And I was in the chapel band. I played guitar in the chapel band pretty much everywhere I was at. First year I was in, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty devastated. The first year I had given up. I was like, I told myself that my best years were behind me. I blew my shot because my dream has always been to be a musician, Mm-hmm. And I told myself that I blew my shot. My best years were behind me. It's time to hang it up. Like you lost your chance. And for the first year, I believed that. That's what I had settled on. I was at the point where I was like grieving, like the death of my dream, Mm-hmm. And I was like, I think I was reading books at the time, about 1 year in, I was reading books on just the power of human potential, And I got this on this real high, just felt real powerful. I was in prison. Like the books made the books. I don't remember which book I was really reading, but whatever it was, it made me feel real powerful. And I just said, "Fuck that." One day, I was like, you know what? That's such a lie. Like I don't got that's not true at all. Like I don't gotta that does not have to be reality. I can do whatever I want, and I don't have to be a statistic. Because I was scared I was gonna go back to prison too when I got out.
Mhm.
Because there's like the recidivism rate is stupid high. Like over 70% of people go back within the first 3 years, and then I had probation on top of it. I don't know. I told myself I was like, I'm not giving up on my dream. I'm not gonna be a statistic. I'm not going back to prison when I get out. I'm not gonna relapse. I'm gonna make a good life for myself. And from that day on, I started doing everything I could to work towards my dream while I was behind bars. For the next 3 years, I could check out acoustic guitar on the rec yard, and when I was on the rec yard, I'd check out the guitar and I'd write songs on the guitar out on the rec yard. When I was back at my room, I would write songs in my head, like melodies and lyrics, and I'd go back out on the rec yard and put guitar parts to them. And I wrote like over 60 songs probably when I was in there.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I got out, and my dad sent me some books on like music marketing for a do-it-yourself musician. Like that, I really loved that book. It was by a guy named Bobby Borg, and I must have read that book. It was like a textbook. It was a nice book, and I must have read that thing 300 times front to back while I was in there. I was just like, so when I got out, I hit the road running. Like I got out of work release and I spent my money that I think I had like $1,200 saved up from work release. I was working at Applebee's when I was at work release. I was a prep cook, and I went to work release my last 10 months of prison, where I could actually like leave, but I was at a facility and stuff, and did that, and then I got out with my $1,200, and I spent it on a guitar and a little basic setup, a little basic 2-input interface, audio box interface, production software, a computer program, and a microphone, all the basic stuff I would need to like make a song. And I started doing it again. I hadn't done music production. I dabbled with it before prison. I was not good at it. People used to say like I was good at it and stuff, and your songs are good. Like I knew I had potential, but like looking back on it now, I can't even listen to the stuff I made before prison. It's so bad. The demos. But I started doing the music production thing again, and but I got out February 2018 and started recording songs at home. Just repetition and kept doing it over. I put out an album, which is still up to this day. I haven't taken it down. I'm going to leave it up forever. But the first album I put out was Braving Babylon, which is like just like enduring captivity. Like it kind of, I guess, like it's a synonym for that. Like just braving Babylon, like being Babylon, being captive by Babylon. And I put that album out in 2019. It's got a lot of good songs on there, but the production, in my opinion, is subpar on that album. But there's a lot of good songs on there. And yeah, I just started doing it. For the first couple of years, I had maybe less than 1,000 monthly listeners, on Spotify. And when I first got out, it was a band. Like Dub 321 was originally like before prison, it was a band. I mean, I had a few different lineups, like probably 2 or 3 different lineups before prison of people. Those people come and go, and they don't take it seriously and stuff like that. And anyway, I got out, and I wanted to make it. My intention was to have it be a band, and I tried to bring a group of guys together, and it's just same old song and dance. Nobody took it seriously enough, and didn't pull their weight. And I ended up having to replace people and then teach people my songs all over again from scratch. And it was like got to the point where it was like about 2 years of doing that. 2021, at that point, I probably had about 1,500 monthly listeners, something like that, in 2021. And I just got fed up with the band thing. And I came to realization that it was holding me back more than anything. And I decided to just go solo and just be a solo artist at the end of 2021. And it was probably the best decision next to turning my life over to God and getting clean. After I decided to go solo, like my growth increased exponentially on like every level. Just because I was able to get stuff done so much easier. You know, I didn't have to run decisions by 3 or 4 other people. I didn't have to wait on other people to get stuff done, to, do their parts or whatever. So I'm a very resilient person. Like I'm persistent, and I just started putting out music. I do everything myself. I do play all the bass. I do all the guitar. I do all the keyboards. One thing I don't do is play drums. I program all my drums. I build the beats from samples and one shots. I can even depending on the sound I'm going for a particular song, I got samples where I can make it sound like it's a real drummer back there. You know what I mean? If I want to, or if I'm going for a more hip hoppy sound, I might use a more artificial drum machine sounding sound. But yeah, I do everything myself. And probably about the end of 2021 when I went solo, I was putting out a song like every couple months at that point, probably every couple months. And I started doing it like every month. As I'm doing this, I'm learning more and more about like just from talking to other artists and stuff that are on the same path, and learning from podcasts and other things like that. Everywhere I could get information, I started learning more and more about the grind and what works and what doesn't, as far as like getting into like the Spotify algorithm and having it push your music to new listeners and things like that, and learning about making short form content to bring awareness to my music and reach new fans, like on TikTok and Instagram Reels and stuff. So that's when I started dabbling in that around the end of 2021. And I just started I found out from talking to somebody that Spotify has an algorithm just like any other social media app. Even though it's a music app, it actually has an algorithm. And that if you post on there consistently, release music consistently, the algorithm on Spotify will favor you. As long as it's good, listenable music, it'll favor you, and it'll start pushing your music to other listeners that listen to that same genre of music. It'll recommend that music to them when they finish listening to whatever band they like that they were listening to. Say it's Bumpin' Uglies or Ballyhoo or Stick Figure. They'll finish a song and it'll play my song just automatically. And the more you release music, the more the algorithm starts to favor you. So I started doing it where I was doing a song every month. My listeners went up to like 4,000 something within a year. By like the end of 2022, I was probably around 4,000 monthly listeners. And then I just got better and better at producing, like repetition. I think I'm to the point now where like I think I'm a pretty damn good producer. And it's just been 5 years out of prison where I felt like my first album I put out sounds like trash to me. But I've come a long way as a producer, so now I'm able to, just through repetition, I can make a song pretty quickly. If I put my mind to it, I can put together a song from scratch to a finished product within a couple days if I really hustle. Usually, on average, probably takes me 4 or 5, realistically. But I've had where I get songs done in 2 days. And so now I started doing a song every 2 weeks, and my monthly listeners went up even more. And so then my original plan for this year was to do a song every 2 weeks the entire year. I got into like March. I started seeing the fruit of doing it every 2 weeks and how my monthly listeners were increasing and my followers on Spotify. And I was like, I saw blood. I don't know how to explain it. It was like I saw like a chink in the armor, you know what I mean? I was like, it just made me want to go harder. I was like, screw it. I'm not gonna do a song every 2 weeks. There's no reason I can't do a song every week. Like, so I started doing that. So now I'm doing a song every week. I started doing that in like March. And now it's for a while there, I was up to your monthly listeners on Spotify will fluctuate a little bit. It's inevitable. It happens with the way they push your music out to new people. It happens in waves. But for a while there, I was up to like almost 50,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. It just recently dropped back down to like 25,000. But from listening to people talk about it and stuff, it's going to go back up. You're always going to get a new level of ground to stand on. You know, you're always going up. My followers are always going up. So every time I get a new wave of my music being pushed, it's going to go higher and higher. Like next time it might go up to 60,000 and then go back down to 35,000 or something like that. But it's been crazy, bro. I've worked with artists that I used to listen to shooting dope. Like I worked with artists that I used to listen to their songs on repeat while I was dope sick and trying not to kill myself. Like fighting the urge to off myself. That's what this tattoo is. The semicolon on my face is. I came really close many times to just ending it and just ultimately decided not to. And like, so I've worked with Bumpin' Uglies. They're a very big reggae rock band from Maryland. Bumpin' Uglies, I got 2 songs with them. And then I got a song with Howie Spangler from Ballyhoo. I should say the name. The songs I have with Bumpin' Uglies are Home Sweet Home and East Coast is in My Blood. And then I have a song with the lead singer of Ballyhoo, Howie Spangler. It's called Guilty Murder. And I was just like, and I know that's just the tip of the iceberg for me. I would have never, like, if you told me back when I was shooting dope, I was going to be doing songs with those artists 10 years later, would have never believed you. So it's like, it's almost hard for me to wrap my head around it still. Like, it's surreal in a way, you know? But my dreams are slowly coming true, man. And I don't ever think about getting high. I know it's not an orthodox thing, and I don't like ever recommend this to other people like as a path, but I don't go to meetings. I don't do NA or AA, and I never did the 12 steps. I just poured myself into my music, and slowly my life's getting better. My dreams are coming true. Very grateful. I guess that's it.
I love it, man. And I mean, you know, we went for a little bit there. It was funny because before we got on, you know, Miles was like, oh, 30 minutes. But it was, you know, you said in the beginning that you want to give people that hope and be able to see that that other life on the other side of that. And if you listen to your story like I just did, and I hope other people listen to it like that, but there's a lot of moments in there where it could have just been over. You know, there's a lot of moments where it could have been over, whether it was, you know, the stuff in the military, you know, the relapsing after the Scientology thing, which is just crazy to me. And then, you know, those being back in the hospital and getting prescribed that stuff, which, you know, then for your doctor to say like, oh no, you're done, you're cut off. And that just shows how much they really did that to people. Like you're an example of that, how they did that to so many people, and left them hanging like that in addiction. There's so many places that it could have ended, and yet, you know, you were able to keep going, and this is where you're at today. And you know, you could see and hear the emotion behind you talking about some of those different moments and seeing what that meant to you. And that's what's really cool about it. And you know, you just saying at the end there, like, you know, you don't go to meetings or you maybe don't do this or this, but that is what you do. You know, you chase your dream, you put your time into that. And I think that's what's special about like different journeys and different ways to get better, is there are different ways to it. And you're an example of of a really awesome way. Being able to chase your dream, see those benefits from it. What's that?
God and purpose.
Yeah.
That's what worked for me.
Yeah.
Submitting to God and then pouring myself into my purpose.
Yeah. And
I'm kind of working the 12 step in a way just by what I do, you know, because I'm always trying to help other people. So that's kind of like my 12 step, I guess. It's just trying to give back and give people hope.
yeah. And I think that's exactly what your story can do. Because there's, obviously definitely some very rough parts of your life, and some people may get to those points. Because I know it was kind of crazy listening to you, because there's a lot I could relate to, like just with my story, with some of your different relationships that you talked about, some of the different moments you ended up in. Like there was a lot I could relate to in that. But to have those moments where you don't see that way out, but then you have that moment, in detox and getting ready to go to jail or prison with that gentleman that shared that moment with you, and like something just flips, right? Something changes a little bit, and you're able to see things in a different perspective, and it's really wild how that can happen.
Yeah, it was definitely a white flag moment for me, dude. I was just like, I feel like I give up, man. I can't do this myself, man. So I need help. Yeah. What was crazy too was I like I mentioned in my stories, like I genuinely deep down like wanted to do good. Even from the time I was in junior high, like I wanted to do the right thing. Like even though as much as I liked getting high, I still wanted to do the right thing deep down. Like I wanted to be good and do the right thing and not disappoint my parents and not steal from people and stuff like that and not lie. But as much as I tried, I could not. I kept doing that stuff. Like as much as I really deep down didn't want to, I'd keep doing it. It got to the point where I just was convinced I was broken. Like I thought I had some kind of, I just thought I messed my brain up, and then I was just couldn't think consequences through, and I was just doomed to do dumb stuff the rest of my life. Like as much as I wanted to do what was good, I couldn't. And then I came across these. I was like 2 weeks into the county jail. I was reading the Book of Romans, and that's what really got me, dude. I was reading the Book of Romans in chapter 7. It talks about having the will to do what is right, but not being able to carry it out, and continuing to do the things you don't want to do, even though you really don't want to do them. And it was literally describing my plight, like right in the book that I had refused to read for 31 years. Like I didn't want anything to do with it, and I refused to read it. And I had such a moment where I sat there and stared at that page, and I was just like, "You gotta be kidding me!" Like this whole time I thought I was like I had a special case. Like I thought I was like unique. Like I thought I was just broken, like I mean, and there was just no hope for me. Here was my whole condition worded in this, and then at the end it says, "Oh wretched man that I am, who will save me from this body of death? Give thanks to our Lord Jesus Christ." And that's the answer, And it's just crazy too. With my mom, like I said, you need Jesus, you need Jesus, and I would just fight it tooth and nail. And I would have never thought that. And today, I'm not ashamed to say that I love Jesus. Like I used to, when I first got out, I was a little bit apprehensive about it. But dude, I feel like that's the most gangster thing you could do in a world that hates Christianity and Jesus for the most part, because most of the world does. And I'll proudly say that Jesus saved my life.
And that's what's awesome about it, is just embracing you and your authentic self, and what saved your life, what gives you hope, what gives you happiness. Like embracing that shit to the fullest is what makes life special. And
I don't never push it on nobody. I'm not the type of person that pushes my spiritual beliefs on anybody. All I ever do is communicate my experience. You know what I mean? Somebody asks me how I did it, I don't lie to them. I tell them my experience. I don't ever tell them you need Jesus or you should read the Bible. You know what I mean? Or I just tell them this was my experience. I don't hit people over the head with the Bible. That's not my style. But I'll tell my story. It's like that's the best thing I do is the power of my testimony alone.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that's almost the best way to just like show people a different perspective, is just sharing what that perspective means to you, and what that perspective or what that belief has done in your life to make your life better than what it was before, right?
Yeah.
All right, Miles. Well, man, I appreciate the you taking the time to share that and be really true about it and authentic about it. And I appreciate that, and I really do take a lot from my time being able to listen to people and being able to pull different parts out of their story that means so much, and that even changes my perspective or my thought process a little bit by listening. And there were so many just different moments in there that I could relate to, and that I really appreciated, whether it was the painful moments or the good ones that you shared. So again, man, thank you so much for coming on and doing that.
I'm grateful for you having me on, man. I always am grateful for the opportunity to share my story, and I think what you're doing is awesome. The way you're giving back and giving people a platform to share their stories like you are. That's a very cool thing. I just want to give you a big up and respect for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And if you want to come back on sometime and talk about something else, I'd love to have you back on.
Yeah, I'm up for it, man. Let me know.
All right. Well, thank you again, Miles. I appreciate it. It's been Illuminate, Navigate, Radiate. Have a great rest of your day.
You too, bro.